You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and joining us is Ambassador Deepa Gopalan Wadhwa, who served as India's envoy to Japan. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your time.
Wonderful to be here, Amitabh. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Ambassador, just about Shinzo Abe and his announcement at that very emotional press conference on Friday about his resignation. Of course, he'll stay on till his successor takes over. But he has a lot of political pedigree, right? His grandfather was Prime Minister, his father was Foreign Minister. He's made a lasting global impact, especially in his second term, which has surpassed his, I think it's great uncle to become the longest serving Prime Minister in a single stint.
That's true. I think in Japan, actually, you need pedigree to be, unlike perhaps in our country, but to be really recognized. So you find a lot of people who come from families which are political families. And so it was with Prime Minister Abe. But I think his pedigree is what also helped him in a way to have a very special relationship with India. Because while you talk about his grandfather, as you perhaps know, that his grandfather was the first Japanese Prime Minister to come to India in 1957. And that made a very lasting impression on the grandfather, because you see, we were the first country that accepted loans, in fact, from development cooperation aid from Japan, and that continued to be really a very important part of our relationship. But I think that was a very, very good phase of our relationship, and that certainly was something that Abe carried forward, because India was really special to him.
And talking about carrying it forward, Ambassador, well, he's seen as the original proponent, if I can use those words, and key architect of what's known as the Quad now. 2012, his article when he talked about Australia, India, Japan, and of course then it was Hawaii forming a diamond. Is that how you also see it?
Yes, in the sense, it's very interesting about Abe, because there's so many ideas today that we just accept. I mean, for example, the whole concept of the Indo-Pacific was something that he mooted during a visit to India in 2007. He talked about the confluence of the seas. So that is what has been his contribution, the whole contribution of the Quad itself. He talked about also a democratic quadrilateral of, so democracies coming together, the quadrilateral, the Quad itself as a security, sort of grouping of countries who were also democracies, wedded to the same thing as rule of law and so on. So he gave a lot of ideas really to the world. Free and open Indo-Pacific, again, that came from Abe. So he was at this at one level an internationalist, and I think in most of the things, the ideas that he proposed, it embraced and saw a role for India. And therefore, he was very important. Again, I go back to our relationship and our own standing on various issues.
When you talk about our relationship, now it's metamorphosed into what Prime Minister Modi calls Japan, America, India strategic coalition. And of course, the Prime Minister went to Japan in 2014. I believe you were there. The Indo-Japan nuclear deal at that time was very uncertain. Just lead us through what you can on that.
Well, yes, we had started, I think, in fact, negotiating this, soon after the American deal that we had with the Japanese. But then the Japanese ran into trouble, because if you remember, they had that triple disaster, and then what happened to Fukushima, and there was a whole anti-nuclear power wave across Japan. So it was not very easy for whichever government was there to actually, sit down and be able to negotiate a deal with us. And this was, of course, not only Abe himself, but there was also the DPJ, in between. But it was after Abe came back, and I think that he helped us through this. And as you know, it was signed in 2016. And it was really special because it's a non-NPT country, and knowing their own history, where they keep saying they're the only country who really suffered an attack by a nuclear weapon, to have come on board was a great thing.
And when you look at our defense relationship now, it's already mature to like the Americans and the Australians, a 2+2 now, foreign and defense ministers meeting. And I don't know whether he'll still be in office. I think the elections of the LDP will be held sometime in September to choose a successor. But there was talk about a virtual meeting happening again, summit, and then the ACSA being signed as well.
That's right. So it's really interesting. Again, you look at the relationship. So the change in the Indo-Japan relationship really started in 2000 with Prime Minister Mori, who incidentally was also very close to Prime Minister Abe. So it was in 2000, we called it then a global partnership. But it was in 2006 that when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh went to Japan, that we added the concept, the idea of making it a strategic relationship too. So it became a strategic and global partnership. And there you find, starting from about 2008, the defense and security relationship starts growing. And when you're talking about Japan, again, all the restraints that Japan has had, and to move out of the alliance and look for a much deeper relationship in the strategic and security area with India was a big thing. And since 2008 to where we are today, where we're talking about signing ACSA, we have a 2+2 at the ministerial level. I think progress has been extremely inordinately fast and very quick. And I think this is because of receptivity on both sides. So, now we actually, across the three services, we have joint exercises. They're now a permanent part of Malabar. So with ACSA, I think we will go into another plane, of the relationship. So I think there has been movement we can be quite happy with. And I think a lot of this really is to do also with Prime Minister Abe.
And how do you see Prime Minister Abe in the current context, in how he's been balancing, say, the US and its military power with keeping China at bay? How he's been doing that?
Yeah, he actually has done a pretty good balance in his relationship. See, on one hand, there has been actually a tightening of the alliance. Even when when President Trump came, he was first actually, before he was even elected, when he was sworn in, to go to meet him in New York. And it's been, knowing the unpredictability of President Trump and his regime, he still managed to strengthen that alliance. Again, with Russia. I mean, he's had almost some 27, 28 meetings with President Putin, tried very hard to resolve the issue of the Northern Ireland. In fact, he said at his press conference that that's one of the things that he leaves undone, and he has a regret about it. And again, with China. So China, it's been a bit of it's been a balancing act, because at one point they said it was hot economics and cold politics. Because just before he got elected, he came in for the second time in 2012 after he had resigned in 2007. The Senkaku takeover had just taken place. So relations were really at an all-time low. From there to work to a relationship where President Xi Jinping was supposed to visit Japan this March, but postponed because of COVID. So I think he's walked the fine line, he's walked it pretty well. I mean, they do realize that the major security threat comes from China. They know what has been happening. The incursions in the air, in the seas and the air around Senkakus has really also, I think the last a year or so spiked considerably. They're aware of the security threats, but they also understand that the economic relationship is extremely, extremely close. So he has walked the fine line quite well. And I saw yesterday, in fact, I was watching his press conference, very cautious not to say anything about China.
Right. I mean, you are also referring to that's the Japanese demeanor, I guess. And of course, Prime Minister Abe himself, when he was extremely apologetic, like you pointed out, for things that he had left half done, so to speak. Russia is one of them. Also, the constitution, amending the constitution to allow a larger assertive military role because of what you had been pointing out earlier, the history of Japan, right? That's something that's not been done.
I don't think that there was public appetite for it. So he did one bit, which was, reinterpret the constitution and pass laws that permitted for collective self-defense. But the amendment of the constitution was a far more complex process, and I don't think he had the support for it. But the third one he said was interesting, and that is something which is very, very Japanese, and that is the question of the abduction of Japanese by the North Koreans. The North Koreans, during a small phase of history, the end of the 70s to about 83, 84, they abducted a lot of Japanese nationals, about 20 of them as far as records go now. And they took them across to North Korea, and Abe came in saying that he would try to get them back. And that was his very, very high priority with him, because it is very, very emotional. It's a very emotive issue in Japan, particularly since the parents, these were young children in some cases, and the parents were still around. And I think he has said that he regretted that he couldn't see that through, though he did manage for that issue to be taken up with Kim Jong-un by both, I think, President Trump, and he claims also the South Korean presidents. So it was on the table, but he feels that he couldn't, get closure on that issue.
Well, one of his other legacies, of course, will be domestic and the economy and the fiscal stimulus and the other stimulus that he performed to let Japan come out of deflation, so to speak. But looking at it globally, the TPP, which the US has pulled out of, he kept that alive even without Donald Trump and the administration and the US.
Absolutely, and I like that resolve, because, he looked at the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And of course, Americans were on board, and despite not joining, he was quite determined to go ahead with it. And he has done that. Of course, on RCEP also, he was, I suppose, very hopeful that we would be on board. He tried to get us on board. And I think in one of the legacies that he mentioned, when he mentioned his legacies, one of the things that he talked about was the trade deal with the EU that he was able to do. So yes, certainly. I mean, he was able to see what was important for the Japanese economy. The problem really was that the Abenomics. I think at least the third leg. There were three arrows. The third leg of it, particularly, which was very difficult to change the Japanese system. And I think he ran into a lot of probably headwinds when he had to do that.
Talking about the Japanese system, and if there's any change, you don't visualize any change in. Of course, there's a whole procedure, and we're not really sure how the LDP will find a successor and who that successor will be. Whether it'll be just the party itself, which will decide. It'll go to next year, and then elect a president with a larger constituency or not. But do you visualize whoever it is who takes over changing anything in terms of global parameters, and especially with India?
Let me tell you, in the short term, what's going to happen is that whoever comes in now is going to be there for only 1 year, because elections are due next October. Now, the fact is that Prime Minister Abe did say that he was going to step down as Prime Minister, but he was not going to step down. He's going to continue as a member of the Diet. He belongs to the largest the faction in the LDP. He still carries a lot of clout. My own feeling is that whoever succeeds him is going to be somebody who is going to be anointed by him. And therefore, we can see a continuity, certainly, insofar as his foreign policy is concerned. Thereafter, one really doesn't know. The names that we are hearing now, for one, is one of the front runners is former Foreign Minister Kishida. There is the Chief Cabinet Secretary Suga. These are people who are already very close to him. So I think in the year to come, in this period before the run up to the elections next year, I really don't think there's going to be very big changes, and I think he's going to be really a very influential person in whatever policies Japan follows, certainly in the immediate future.
Ambassador Deepa Gopalan Wadhwa, absolutely appreciate your time and your insight and experience in this interview. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Amitabh. Been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
And you can get all the latest news and analysis on our website, StratNews Global. And if you like videos like this, just click on the bell icon on our YouTube channel to get reminders, and do support our kind of journalism on our website. You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh.